Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you live from beautiful, wintry Budapest, where we've had our first snowfall. I hope everybody has had a great weekend and a good start to their week so far. Hi Roman, hi Hikmatillo, hi Sanjay. Good to see many students in the class on time. This lesson is focusing on speaking part 3, some practice and strategy to get those higher band scores. Again, students, this lesson is from aehelp.com. That's academicenglishhelp.com. For lots more help with the academic version of the exam, please visit us there. Jaskaran Singh, good to see a member in the class. How you doing? Students, if you are learning for the general version of the exam, check us out at gieltshelp.com. On both of these websites, we have over 100 hours of HD video lessons with me and some other teachers as well, and 6 original practice exams, and a fully interactive course for your phone, tablet, and PC. Hi, Moro. Hi, Danielle. Good to see more of our members. We're still running our Black Friday, Cyber Monday 40% discount. It is the best discount of the year for us. BLKF Day. Get a 40% discount on either of our websites. I'll quickly show you those while we wait for a few more students to join in. This is the academic website here. Click that big red button to join. Use that 40% Black Friday discount code during the checkout. For the general version of the exam, it's the green background. Same idea. Click that big red button to join us there. Get the premium package. You can download our app, Academic IELTS Help, from your Android iOS. Our general IELTS app is also populating to the Google Play Store as we speak, so you can search for it. Just search for General IELTS Help. You may find it. If not, check back tomorrow. And if you have questions about our products, our apps, our websites, our exams, so forth, so on, and the IELTS exam, just send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com, and I will certainly do my best to answer your questions. All right, students, a quick peek at this week's live classes. Live classes are according to Central European Time. Most classes will start at 13:30 for members and 15 o'clock where everybody can chat. Today, it's a speaking part 3 for everyone. Students, it's speaking, so make sure to speak, okay? Don't just listen to me. Speak, repeat as much as possible, okay? So repeat questions, answers. Roshni, good to see you in class. Ashush, we will have a part 2 class, I believe, a little bit later in the week. Yeah, on the 7th. So Ashush is asking, why aren't we focusing on part 2? We will have a part 2 for everyone on the 7th, Ayush. So make sure to stay tuned. Tomorrow we'll start a task 2 and then a reading class. We'll finish that task 2 on Friday, do a task 1. As well on Friday, we'll do a Q&A session for members on Saturday and then finish it up with a speaking part 2. So there you are. That's looking towards this week. All right. IELTS speaking interview, the speaking section of the exam, takes about 12 minutes roughly, maybe 15, somewhere between there. It has 3 parts. Okay, so part 1 will be just questions on general topics to get to know you better. The questions will focus on you. Part 2 will be a cue card. And once you're done the cue card, a response, your 2-minute response, then the examiner for part 3 will ask you some more specific questions related to the topic of the part 2 cue card, okay? So part 3 is the more challenging part of the speaking interview. That's what we're starting with today. Just bear with me, okay? So the examiner will say that is the end of part 2. Now we begin part 3. for part 3, I will ask you some more questions related to the topic of part 2. Let's talk about borrowing and lending. Now, before we get into these questions, I just want to make sure that all of you are extremely clear on how to use these words. These are very commonly misused by English as second language learners. So just keep in mind these examples as we work through this. Okay, so I borrowed a pencil from my friend. Versus I lent a pen to my friend. Versus my friend borrowed a pencil from me. Versus, or let's not confuse you, pen from me versus my friend lent me a pencil. Okay, so again, keep this in mind as we go through this speaking part 3. So I borrowed a pencil from my friend. That means I said to my friend, can you lend me a pencil? My friend said, sure, I can lend you a pencil. Therefore, I borrowed a pencil from my friend. With these words, the prepositions are very important. So be really careful. And again, make sure to speak and repeat. Okay, now the other one. So my friend asked to borrow a pen from me. So I lent him my pen. My friend borrowed a pen from me. Okay, so be really, really careful with these ones. It's easy to make mistakes. I bet some of you are thinking, oh, I hope I don't get this kind of question for part 3. All right. So let's get into some questions. Now remember, for part 3, always focus on answer, explain, example. Don't overspeak. Don't underspeak. Okay? Here we go. Let's get into it and then we'll dig deeper. So let's talk about borrowing and lending. First question, when is it a good idea to borrow an item instead of buying it? Give me a nice full sentence answer for this one. I'll correct you in real time as best I can and then give you a sample answer of my own. So, when is it a good idea to borrow an item instead of buying it? All right, Parth, I see you're having a little bit of trouble with the audio. If it's quiet for anybody else, let me know if it's not loud enough. It should be. Okay. So Morrow says, in my point of view, one of the objects that gets used barely in our house is a printer. So this is a common object that I often borrow from my peer. Morrow, careful with part 3. Part 3 is not asking about you here. It's asking in general, when is it a good idea to borrow an item instead of buying it? Okay. Awaz Aksmadov says, well, in my opinion, when people do not have enough money or lack of money to buy something, it would be a good idea to borrow it instead of purchasing it. Awaz, don't repeat your ideas, okay? So just once. So, well, in my opinion, when people do not have enough money to buy an item, that would be a good situation to borrow it instead, period. It's the simpler, more concise way, Awaz, to answer that. Avoid the word something, Awaz. Students, always find nouns better than thing, something. Okay, thing and something are weak nouns. They do not help your lexical resource score. Okay. Amar Mohadkar says, for a short period of time. I'm not sure if you're missing a part of the text there, Amar, but make sure to answer in full sentences. Okay. All right. Let's see. Who else? Felipe Cuenca says, a car, for example, I prefer to borrow a car from time to time rather than buying it. Felipe, again, it's a general question here. And he says it's a good time to borrow an item when you actually need it for that particular moment, but not later. Okay, not bad, NA. Stay away from the word you. Okay, so here's a couple of tips to make your speaking score better. Okay, so increase your speaking score. Okay, tip number 1. Avoid the words you and thing, something. Okay, find the better person nouns and object nouns. Okay, for example, individuals. All right, people instead of you. All right, instead of something, you could use objects, items, belongings. Okay, always find that better noun. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2, use the question in your answer and reflect the desired grammar. Okay, so here in this question, it's asking, when is it a good idea to borrow an item instead of buying it? So this question is focusing on a condition, a situation. So you need to use a condition. Okay? It is a great idea to borrow objects instead of purchasing them when they are needed only momentarily, or if the individual is low on funds and cannot purchase the item at that time. Okay, commonly this may be a car or a special tool like a drill. All right, so there is your full Band 9 response to this type of question, which uses the question in the answer, paraphrases the key words to show lexical resource, gives a clear explanation and an example. All right, full sentence, students, full sentence. So repeat after me. When is it a good idea to borrow an item instead of buying it? It is a great idea to borrow objects instead of purchasing them when they are needed only momentarily, or if the individual is low on funds and cannot purchase the item at that time. Commonly, this may be a car or a special tool like a drill. Okay. So that is a solid Band 9. Now, of course, in part 3, a unique aspect of this part of the speaking interview is the examiner will ask follow-up questions to go deeper into the language and get more vocabulary and more expression from the candidates. So they will ask follow-up questions like, can you give an example? And then you need to say certainly, for instance, and then give an example. So give me a nice example of when you are borrowing or when someone is borrowing an item instead of purchasing it. Okay, give me some examples. Tinsy, I'm not sure what your question is referring to. Can we say for any celebration? Maybe ask me a little bit more specifically. Okay. Hikmatillo, don't use the word thing. Okay. Harsh, good luck on your speaking test tomorrow. Make sure to speak as much English as possible today, and especially tomorrow before your speaking exam. Make sure to use English only. Take some speaking scripts with you to your exam. Find people, if possible, who are there that can practice with you. Show up an hour early. Okay. AJ, if you're not able to subscribe, it might be a national restriction or a firewall at the national level, depending on what country you're in. Okay. Indanil has the first follow-up answer. Very good, Indanil. Indanil Abe Singh says, for example, as a university student, I sometimes borrow tutorial notes from my friends when I miss a class. All right, Indanil, it's not bad. Just make sure that your example supports your explanation. Okay, that's a different type of situation for borrowing. Make sure that your example is related to the answer you gave. Okay, otherwise it lowers your coherence mark. Roshni says, like yesterday, I borrowed an eraser from my friend because there was no stationery near the library, and it saved me some time. Okay, Roshni, again, that's a different example, right? Your example is for the unavailability of an object, okay, where it's unavailable and therefore you borrow it. So again, as long as you gave that for your answer for the previous question, Roshni, it's okay. Otherwise, it's confusing. Always make sure, students, that your examples are related to your answer for this kind of question. Okay. Izatulo Kanotov says, a good example for the current situation can be a trip to long distances or mountains, whereby I will borrow a car from my brother or one of my good friends just for a few days instead of paying $20,000 to purchase one. Izatulo, I think you have the right idea. Just make sure to complete your ideas always, students. Remember, your listener is an alien. They do not know what you know. Okay. And he says, like, I rarely require a printer at home, so I usually borrow it from my kind neighbor instead of paying $300-400 to only use it once or twice and purchasing my own. Okay, NA, again, finish your ideas, use quantitative language. That's how you push those band 6s to band 7s, band 7s to band 8s. Justpreet says, certainly, for example, my laptop, some people don't have money for buying it, so it's a good idea to borrow such technology. I don't know about a laptop, Justpreet. Perhaps in some situations. Again, Justpreet, don't use the word things. Things lowers your lexical resource score. Okay? Things is a negative word. All right? Because you're not using better vocabulary. Rodolin Donato says, in my perspective, it's best to borrow from someone if the person is having financial difficulty, as it is impractical to spend money on an item which is needed only for a brief period of time. Rodolin, nice composition, grammatically, vocabulary. Just watch your logic, okay? The response there, it's for the previous question, I'm assuming. It's logically flawed, so careful. Felipe says, last Sunday I needed to go to the hospital, but it was late night, so I had to borrow a car from my cousin. Okay, Felipe, that's good. That works. All right. So certainly, Last Saturday, I took a trip to the countryside with my family, and instead of buying a car for $10,000, I just borrowed my brother's. It was much more rational, and I only needed it the one time in the past 3 months. All right. So again, quantitative language using numbers. Okay, $10,000, 3 months. That helps your clarity, your cohesion, coherence. So use numbers. Can you give an example? Certainly. Last Saturday, I took a trip to the countryside with my family, and instead of buying a car for $10,000, I just borrowed my brother's. It was much more rational, and I only needed it the one time in the past 3 months. Fantastic. So again, keep these tips in mind to increase your score, okay? Avoid the words you, thing, something. Find better nouns. Use the questions in your answers. Okay, reflect the grammar of those questions. Use quantitative language. All right, so use quantitative language. It means numbers to enhance coherence and improve cohesion. Okay. Focus on those points. All right. Let's adapt those to the next question. Here we go. Have lending and borrowing customs changed since a generation before? Give me a nice full sentence answer for that one. Have lending and borrowing customs changed since a generation before? Let's see what you come up with. Okay. Jessica Run, that's for the previous question. Well, such as an item, such as when I'm outside of the city, I borrow some items like a bike, car from my friends. Okay, that's good, Jessica. Let's see what other answers are coming up for the current question. Awaz says, absolutely, it has changed so much compared to a generation before. 50 years ago, people used to borrow and lend by meeting each other face to face, but now individuals can use digital programs like Click to give money to each other. Give or lend or borrow? Careful, Awaz. Make sure you're clearly answering the question. Pachu Yadav says, yes, lending and borrowing have changed a lot nowadays compared to a generation before because of the advancement of technology. These days, banking, mobile and credit and debit cards are very common. So people are frequently borrowing money from financial institutions. Right, Pachu? Careful. Finish your idea. Don't expect, Pachu, that your listener will finish that idea for you. Right? It's very important. I know maybe you ran out of space in the chat, but just finish the idea. All right? Okay, Tinsy Kuriakose says, for instance, last week I had to borrow a dress from my friend to attend a wedding function, and I didn't have time to buy one, nor did I want to spend the money on a nice dress for one occasion. Tinsy, that's for the previous. It's not bad. Okay. Rodolin Donato says, for instance, as I am fond of reading, I usually approach my friends to lend me their books, specifically their fiction novels and comics. All right. Students, let's focus in on the current question. So have lending and borrowing customs changed since a generation before? Now, the question clearly is have. Okay, it's present perfect. Most of the time for these present perfect questions, the answer is yes. Yes, they have. So one way to show that you understood that it's present perfect, answer quickly and stay on target, is immediately say yes. These customs have changed quite a bit since my parents' time. A generation before compared to you would be your parents' time. So a nice way to paraphrase a generation before is parents' time. Generation before my parents' time. It's the same idea. Okay. So answering that nice and quickly. Okay, we have some answers coming up now from many of our students. Roman Rain says, in the past, people borrowed things for small purposes like clothes. Nowadays, government provides loans which help them to buy instead of borrowing. Roman, you're on the right track. You want to clarify that and make sure you include the present perfect have at least once in your response, because this question is fishing for the present perfect. Have something changed since? Okay, it's fishing for present perfect. Bahar Malek says, I strongly believe so. As a kid, I remember we used to borrow even eggs or tomatoes from our neighbors, but nowadays it seems weird to ask for such small items. Yeah, I think some of you are doing a good job visualizing and realizing that indeed these have changed, these customs. Sachin Kumar says, it has changed. Borrowing customs from each generation because technology is changing. Okay. And he says, yes, the customs of lending and sharing changed a lot. There are online platforms to borrow items like furniture, electronics equipment, dresses, and the payment amount is much less than the original. Okay. So many of you are thinking correctly. Technology is usually a good go-to response when we're talking about comparing the present to the past or predicting the future compared to the present. Technology is usually a good choice. Okay. Morrow says, most certainly it has altered in comparison to half century ago, as it used to be more widespread to borrow money from close relatives. However, we see more and more people borrow funds from financial institutions. Yeah, very true. Okay, Gerber Singh says, of course, it has changed dramatically. Nowadays, people can easily borrow items from past generations compared to past generations because of the advancements of technology. Danielle says, it is so obvious to me that there has been a lot of change in borrowing and lending because of the plenty contemporary technologies like social media as well as mobile phones, which make it much easier for people to communicate and ask for favors. Danielle, good. I just adjusted by putting in that present perfect. Again, remember, everyone speaking, repeat me, speak with me. Okay. Good. So yes, these customs have changed quite a bit since my parents' time. Not only has borrowing become different because of a changing global economic climate, but also because of the advancement in technology. All right. So here is my response without going overboard. So have lending and borrowing customs changed since a generation before? Yes, these customs have changed quite a bit since my parents' time. Not only has borrowing become different because of a changing global economic climate, but also because of the advancement in technology. So here, notice a couple of interesting points to increase your band score in the speaking section. Not only, but also. What kind of a conjunction is this paired conjunction? The not only, but also. What do we call that? Borrowing and lending are two sides of the same coin, Gerber, so I don't need to mention both. Okay. So what kind of a conjunction, what kind of a joining element is not only, but also? Hikmatillo says it is a correlative. Exactly, Hikmatillo. Very good. Yeah, correlative conjunctions are very strong conjunctions that emphasize language. Good, Annie. Yeah, it's a correlation. Co means together, relation, relative. They're relatives together. They make sense of the statement. All right? Use correlative conjunctions again intermittently to bump up your score. It's not collocations, Jaspreet. It's correlation. It's a correlative conjunction. Okay? So, changing global economic climate, nice lexical resource, of course, and advancements in technology. Fantastic. Now comes the follow-up question. Can you elaborate? Okay. So in this case, students, I want you to elaborate on my answer. This is one of the most popular follow-up questions in the speaking section, especially in speaking part 3. So definitely be ready for this kind of a question, okay? Can you elaborate? So please use my answer and elaborate. So elaborate on changing economic climate and advancements in technology. So elaborate on these 2 points. Point number 1, point number 2. Okay? Elaborate means go into more detail. Can you elaborate? When you hear this question from the examiner, it means can you give more details? Can you give more explanations? Perhaps an example. That's basically what this means, okay? So can you give further details, explanations, and perhaps an example, all right? So that's what the examiner means by can you elaborate? Elaborate means paint the picture, okay? Sue 41210 says, what is economic climate? Economic climate, Sue, basically means the economic situation in the world, okay? So it means the financial situation. We sometimes use this expression economic climate or economic environment, okay? Simply put, Sue, it just means economic situation. So can you elaborate? What does it mean lending and borrowing have become different because of the global economic climate since a generation before, or advancements in technology? All right. See, we have a couple of answers coming up. That's great. Vipan Madgil says, for example, I remember when I was a child, my mother used to share some vegetable dishes which were made by her, but nowadays it seems weird when she asks for something from our neighbors because everybody is expected to buy their own groceries and small items. Sure, Vipan, again, remember to connect, okay? Eduardo Valdez says, yes, people are less likely to lend objects properties since the old days. That's because back then neighbors used to stay more in contact, but they now rarely see each other because of technology and other interfering circumstances. So Eduardo, again, make that connection. Okay? NA says, of course, nowadays, the globalized world, people go to many places to work. It makes sense to borrow items like furniture, equipment, rather than to buy them. Okay. Varvara Alexei says, in the past, for example, they had been given preferences to borrow cars, money, and books. However, now they have been taking objects from others related to technology, such as laptop, hair dryers, and so on. Varvara, not bad. Okay, that could be useful. Ganesh Gautam says, earlier people had less communication facilities as technology was not as vast, and people used to socialize less as in the current generation. It is completely different. Ganesh, I'm not sure how that's related. Okay. Jaspreet says, yes, now people have more employment opportunities due to advancements in technology, so they don't rely on each other for lending and borrowing as much as they used to in the past. Jaspreet, very good. That's much more in line with what I'm thinking. All right. So, can you elaborate? Yes, certainly. Yes, of course. In the past, people used to borrow money from each other rather than banks. But nowadays, with the massive amount of currency that's being produced, borrowers take loans from financial institutions much more readily, such as Visa or MasterCard. Also, technology has enabled people to communicate with many friends instantaneously, so they can more easily borrow items from each other, like through Facebook. Okay. All right. So repeat after me. Yes, of course. In the past, people used to borrow money from each other rather than banks. But nowadays, with the massive amount of currency that's being produced, borrowers take loans from financial institutions much more readily, such as Visa or MasterCard. Also, technology has enabled people to communicate with many friends instantaneously, so they can more easily borrow items from each other, like through Facebook. All right? So that is the elaboration that's deeply connected with my previous answer. The yes, these customs have changed quite a bit since my parents' time. Not only has borrowing become different because of a changing global economic climate, but also because of the advancements in technology. Again, make sure, students, that in part 3, when the examiner is asking a follow-up question, your answer is strongly related to the previous answer, okay? That's very, very important for those high band scores. So that's my next tip, okay? So tip number 4 to get those higher band scores. Make sure that your answers to follow-up questions are strongly related to your previous answers. Okay, does that make sense? All right, I hope it does. Okay. Let's go to the next question. Here we go. Okay, so keep all of these points in mind. Use correlative conjunctions, quantitative language. Make sure to answer, explain, example. Next question. What are good policies to follow when lending expensive objects to friends or family? I think that's a clever question for us to ponder on. Again, if you need some time to think about your answer, you can start by, that's a great question. Please allow me a moment to think of a great answer. Okay? You can buy yourself a little bit of time with that to think. And it is good to think before you speak. I believe that's a saying in every culture and every language. Think before you speak. Okay. Awaz was probably thinking about this for a bit and answers, well, it is an uncommon question. I think that the advantages of lending valuable objects like cards or digital programs such as printers, because individuals would pay more attention to them than buying new ones. Awaz, I think you missed the question. So what are good policies to follow when lending expensive objects to friends or family? It means what are your rules? Okay. Policies in this case means rules. What are some good rules to follow? All right. Marzia says, due to the advancement in technology, borrowing has declined. Careful with your careful misusing passive and active voice, students. I've seen a couple. So Marzia, due to the advancement in technology, borrowing has declined increasingly. For example, people used to share one phone in a building or a house. Okay. Fatkan Amira, if you say no to this question, you say, I will say no, doesn't make sense. Okay, the answer of no to this question doesn't make sense. So careful, students. If you don't understand a question, it's better to just say, I don't get that question. Let's just go to the next one. Saying no or yes absolutely shows no comprehension. Okay. Just Quran says, well, there's a big risk when anyone is lending a valuable item without agreement. So in this situation, they can hire a third party for a guarantee or sign a written agreement for reduced risk. Just Quran, really nice answer. Whoosh, thumbs up. That was good. Okay. Reduced risk. Use the past participle on that one. Just Quran. Okay. But it's a nice answer. Yeah. So writing a contract, writing some kind of a formal agreement that both parties are clear on. Absolutely. It's a good answer. Shikandra Hayat says, well, I think there should be a strict policy for lending high-valued items to other people, such as friends or relatives. Personally, I would not lend my expensive personal items, such as a laptop. Okay, Sikandar. But if you do, what policy would you follow? Right? That's the question. Nelma Nelson, anything borrowed from anyone has a few basic rules which come to mind, like returning it on time and also in good condition. Nelma, not bad, but just don't generalize the answer. Anything borrowed from anyone? Really? Are you sure? Don't generalize, students. Don't generalize like that. Don't take a specific question and then say, well, everything and all things and everything. It's not good. Okay, you want to stay specific. You'll get better marks. Okay, Oscar Cordozo. Well, normally borrowing and lending valuable belongings happen within family and friends. For that reason, the best policy is belief, trust, and hope. Ooh, Oscar, I don't know. Careful with that. It might not work out so well in the long run. Life is long. It's not a Hollywood movie, and certainly there are unexpected circumstances, and it's best to be prepared for those. Jaspreet, there are many strategies to pursuing borrowing and lending. People have to return objects on time so that there aren't misunderstandings between borrower and lender. All right. So here's my answer. That's a great question. Please allow me a moment to think of a great answer. I suppose a few fundamental rules to adhere to when lending valuable items to others is a written agreement on what is expected, such as condition and time to return the item. One policy I always follow is you break it, you buy it. Okay? All right. So repeat after me. What are good policies to follow when lending expensive objects to friends or family? That's a great question. Please allow me a moment to think of a great answer. I suppose a few fundamental rules to adhere to when lending valuable items to others is a written agreement on what is expected, such as condition and time to return the item. One policy I always follow is you break it, you buy it. All right. Mahmoud Ahmed says, we need to make sure that some regulations are present. We need to know the person we are going to lend to, like family members, close friends, and relatives. So I believe that there should be reciprocal trust. Nice use of the word reciprocal, Mahmoud. Reciprocal means back and forth. So I trust them, they trust me. Okay, Danielle Tarasov says, I believe it's crucial to apply for certain obligations before lending expensive items to make sure that they will get it back to the lender on time and in good condition. Emphasizing the requirements before the deal is an essential part of the policy. Very good, Danielle. Okay. Yvonne says, I believe a good notion to keep in mind should be the attitude and the responsibilities to have when accepting the commitment of borrowing. All right. Sukraj Singh says, what is the meaning of adhere? Adhere means to follow, okay, to carefully follow and keep in mind. That's the meaning of adhere. Adhere means to stick to it. Okay, the phrasal verb is stick to it. Good question, Sukraj. I was wondering if somebody would ask that. All right. Hikmatillo says, well, that's an interesting question. I think a person is always yes man for their relatives. So lending an item in any circumstance, he will have more respect in society. Hikmatillo, I think your mind wandered to a different part of the notion there. Okay. All right. Next question. Can there be negative outcomes to lending valuable items? This is your follow-up. Can there be negative outcomes? Clearly, this is a loaded question, obviously. So can there be negative outcomes to lending valuable items? Yes, I'm sure there can be. What are they? Give me a nice answer, explanation, example. Remember, students, visualize the examiner like your grandfather or your grandmother. They don't know what you know. You need to very clearly and completely explain your ideas. Okay? All right. Omid Beigi, for the previous question, says, it has been said to have trust in your acquaintances. In spite of this, I still reckon we should have some backups, backup checks, since the relationships are different from trading relations. I'm not sure, Omid, what you're meaning by that last part. Make sure to answer that clearly, okay? Outcome means results, consequences, Hikmatillo. Okay. Suda Timsina says, yes, sometimes there can be bad outcomes. Let me get you back on camera here and have a peek at my baby girl when she was still a baby. All right, here we go. So back on screen, give you a little bit more time to think about some fantastic answers. There we go. Oh, camera is having a bit of an issue. Let's try it one more time. Okay, just bear with me. Maybe I'll have to run to my neighbor and see if they have a spare camera to lend me. No, I'm just kidding. Probably wouldn't happen. All right. So here we go. A little bit more here. I see a lot of good answers have come up. All right. Abdul Rahman says, yes, if you're lending some items to relatives or friends, and they break the item, you cannot recover the cost because they are related to you. Okay. Inundil says, definitely if a valuable item gets damaged, a formal or written agreement taken previously would come into action. This way you can take legal action in order to gain compensation for the loss. Okay, avoid the word you and yours, students. Charanjit Singh says, yes, there can be some bad outcomes because sometimes people do not return money on time, and this can create financial strain. Okay, I'm correcting in real time, students, so you can mark down the location in the video at 52 minutes, okay? Abdu Kakor Otajanov, every action, every business we use on earning money should be profitable our society first. The second stage is to focus on financial security. That seems like an off-topic answer. Roshni says, yes, definitely there are some disadvantages of lending items a person can break, and a policy which indirectly becomes a headache to the lender, like as most people borrow laptops from others. Okay, Roshni, I'm surprised many of you are talking about borrowing and lending laptops. It's one of the last things I would ever lend to someone, simply because of all the information that's contained on the laptop. All right. So here, yes, absolutely, yes, absolutely. If an expensive item is damaged or not returned on time, especially one that has much utility, like a car, then this can lead to conflict between the lender and the borrower. This is why, as I had just mentioned, it's a good idea to have some clear written guidelines in place. Okay, so repeat after me. Can there be negative outcomes to lending valuable items? Yes, absolutely. Let's use the question in the answer. There can be bad consequences. If an expensive item is damaged or not returned on time, especially one that has much utility, like a car, then this can lead to conflict between the lender and the borrower. This is why, as I had just mentioned, it's a good idea to have some clear written guidelines in place. Okay, that's a nice full sentence answer to that question. Now, if you're doing a great job in your speaking part 3, that means that you're fluent, you're answering smoothly. The examiner will have more time to ask you some more questions, and they might break into another topic, like let's talk about favors. What are some common situations where people ask for favors from each other? Which of these situations may be risky to extend the favor? That's the follow-up. It is often said that when people perform good deeds, they can expect good deeds in return. Is this always true? Can you elaborate? Students, these 2 questions with their respective follow-up questions, I will leave for you to practice on your own at home. You can record your answers in MP3 format to these questions and send them to my email for a band score estimate. Okay, my email is Adrian, Adrian, at aehelp.com. Again, remember everyone, if you like this lesson, you want to watch some high definition, crystal clear, bright lessons, over 100 hours of videos, a fully interactive course, integrated apps for your phone, tablet, PC. You can get our premium package, aehelp.com. That's for academic IELTS, GIELTS help.com for general, and use the code BLKFDAY for a 40% discount. That's our Black Friday 40% discount. Tomorrow, students, we will do task 2. We will start a task 2 for our members and a reading. That's it for this class. Remember to review your notes, review new words that you've learned in this class, and I wish all of you a fantastic rest of your day. Bye for now from the heart of Europe, Budapest. Much love.